Ever feel like you're pulled in a million directions at once? Like, try and be everything to everyone. Caregiver, employee, friend, all at the same time.
Yeah,
It can be a lot, especially if you're caring for a loved one with developmental disabilities.
absolutely.
And that's what we're diving into today with Cheap ABA, caring for an individual with developmental disability, finding balance.
It's a really great resource, because they're not afraid to get real about the challenges. Like they come right out and
Yeah.
say, this journey is different for everyone. There's no one right way to do this.
Exactly. And they really hammer home that each person, each family has unique needs.
Yeah. And the support systems, the whole dynamic is different. So what works for one person?
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation at all.
And one thing I really appreciate is how they acknowledge the weight of it all. They say something like, it's not uncommon to feel like your life has been compromised, which I think is huge.
Absolutely. Just acknowledging that, because it's easy to feel guilty about that, right? Like as a caregiver, you should be able to do it all. And this source is like, nope, it's hard. It's okay to admit that.
Exactly. You're not alone in feeling that way. But here's the thing, and I think they do a nice job of this too. It's not all doom and gloom. They also talk about the joy that can be found in this role.
Okay, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, you're often celebrating even the smallest victories. Like those moments of progress, the connections you make, they're powerful. And there's a joy that comes with that that's hard to describe.
That makes a lot of sense. Because it is about finding those moments, right? Those bright spots that remind you of the why.
Absolutely.
But we can't gloss over the challenges either, like the toll it can take. And I think the source does a great job of addressing this too.
Right, and that's where caregiver stress comes in.
Yeah.
And they don't just like throw the term around, they actually get into the nitty-gritty, like common signs of caregiver stress.
Right, which can be so easy to just like brush off.
Totally. And you're in the thick of it, you don't always see it yourself.
Yeah.
But they talk about things like, fatigue, mood swings, trouble sleeping.
Yeah, stuff everyone deals with, but it's amplified when you're a caregiver, right? And what I like is they don't just point it out, they actually give you solutions.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this is where it gets really helpful because they talk about self-care.
Okay, because sometimes when I hear self-care, I'm like, yeah, right, I have time for that.
Right. Bubble baths and whatnot.
Exactly.
But they get it. They talk about actually scheduling breaks.
Okay, but like real breaks, not just running to grab a coffee.
Yeah, like actually blocking out time for yourself.
I mean, if it's 15 minutes.
Exactly. To read or go for a walk or just sit in silence, whatever works for you.
I love that. Finding those pockets of time to recharge.
Because you have to be any good to anyone else.
Absolutely. But sometimes you need more than just a break. You need help from other people.
Right. 100%. And they talk about that too, about seeking support from friends, family, professionals. They even mention Cheap ABA as a resource.
Right, like you don't have to do this all on your own.
Nope. There are people out there who get it. And they can offer advice or just listen.
Sometimes just having someone who understands makes all the difference.
For sure. And they talk about internal stuff too, like mindfulness.
Which, sometimes that word feels a little vague, but they actually give you concrete things you can try.
Yeah. Like focusing on your breath for a few counts.
Yeah.
Or like really paying attention when you're washing dishes. Or just taking a minute to look at nature. Little things.
To bring you back to the present moment,
Mm.
which is so important.
When you're feeling overwhelmed, it can really help.
And speaking of support, I love how they end by saying, we're here for you, which, it's a common phrase, but it feels different coming from them,
It does. And I think it's because they're hinting at something bigger. Like they're talking about systemic change.
Like they're saying it's not just on you, the individual, to make this work.
It's bigger than that.
There are things that need to change on a societal level to really support caregivers.
Right, because even with all the self-care and the support systems, there are these barriers in place that make it so much harder.
So it's almost like they're putting out a call to action by saying, we're here for you.
Totally. Like, how can we as a society
Yeah.
do better for both caregivers and people with disabilities?
Right. What would it look like if, respite care was affordable and accessible?
Exactly.
So caregivers could actually take those breaks without worrying about the cost.
Or what about jobs? Like real inclusive job opportunities for people with disabilities.
So they could thrive.
And maybe even relieve some of the pressure on caregivers.
It's like we always say, it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
It's the same thing here, but even more so, you need that support.
You need a village that's ready and able to help in a real way.
And a village that values everyone, right? Including people with disabilities and the people who care for them.
Yes. We need to change how we think about this. It's not a burden, it's just part of life.
This has given me so much to think about.
You too.
It's like this resource, it's about individual well-being, but it also makes you think about the bigger picture.
Totally. Like, what's our responsibility as a society? And I think that's what we want you to take away from this.
Yes.
Self-care is essential, but we also have to advocate for change to make things better for everyone.
What can we do in our own lives to be a part of that change? That's the question I want us all to be asking ourselves.
Because even small things can make a difference.
Absolutely. Awareness, speaking up, offering support, it all adds up.
And hopefully someday, finding balance as a caregiver won't feel impossible.
Yes. It shouldn't be a dream, it should be a reality. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for breaking all this down with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you're not alone in this. We'll see you next time.